All right, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to My Smartboard Can Do What? So my name is Cori Frede. I am the educational consultant at Visual Sound, and we have partnered with the district to help you guys not only get the smartboards, but also get you as the teachers comfortable with the technology, because we all know if you just have it hanging on your wall, you might not know how to use it and it's just going to sit there. So we want to make sure that those of you who did get this new technology have the comfort level to not only use it but to excel with it, because when you understand the technology, it's really going to help bring your pedagogy to that next level. I have a board in the office with me right here, and I will be taking you on a tour of it today. So again, this session is going to be the hardware. We're going to look at the actual board. If you are coming to one of my later sessions, I know I'm doing 3 sessions for your district today. This session right now is the hardware. The second session is the software, and the third session is the cloud. So those are the 3 sessions that I am presenting today on using SMART and the SMART technology. What I'd like to do before I stand up and go to the board itself is just get a feel for the room. So I know that your school has some older smart boards, you have some newer smart boards. I believe you have an order in for some additional newer ones that haven't arrived yet because of all that shipping cargo down in California. So if you guys can just kind of give me what do you currently have? Do you know what the board looks like in your classroom? Because I can tell by backgrounds that you guys are at home today. So when you look at the board in your classroom, how many of you still have projectors? Okay, so you're all basically at the flat panels at this point? Okay. And how many of your flat panels, how many pens do you have on the board? 2 pens, okay. And do the 2 pens look the same, or are they different? Like, do you have 2 gray pens, or do you have a red and a black pen? All right, Nicole just told me she has the red, black. Okay. So the reason I'm asking is because that's the easiest way to differentiate the models of smart boards without you guys knowing the model names. So the board that you have with the red, black pen is the 6000, and that is it's like the top of the line of the smart boards. You're going to see when I'm showing you these features, it is incredible the stuff that you can do with this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my camera to full view instead of having the slide down the deck. And excuse me. And I'm going to walk you through this beautiful board that you guys all have. Now, the one that I have in my office may be slightly different than the ones that you have. I say that because these boards, oops, I'm moving the camera the wrong direction. These boards come in 3 sizes. The one I'm currently going to be demoing on is a 75-inch. They also come in 65-inch, and I believe they come in 86-inch. So like I said, there's 3 different sizes, but the boards themselves are all the same in the sense of the technology. The other differences is the older version of this model does not have the erasers. So if you have the erasers, that's the newer model. And then the newer model has USB-C. My demo board here does not have the USB-C. That is the newest of the new. So it really, like I said, it depends on when it was installed. The boards themselves are going to be very similar in functions. The only difference is every time they up the model, they just add or tweak something small. All right, so as you can see on my board, I'm going to just move my chair out of the way. On the side, move the camera back in that direction a little bit. On the side right here, you can see my buttons panel, and I'm going to turn my screen off for the first part because I want you to see what it looks like when you physically come in the classroom. Now, my board is on a cart, but your boards, I believe, are mounted on the wall. You will still be able to see that side panel from the wall because it is kind of tilted off the side. When you walk in the classroom, I want you to look at your board. And if you see this home button right here, if it's lit up, that means your board has electricity going to it. If this light right here is dim or black or off, that means you don't have any power. So I want to let you know that first, because that's like the number one troubleshooting is my board on? That right there is going to be your cue. If it's not on, there are two different things you can check. And now here's the biggest issue is I don't know exactly how it was mounted in your classrooms. If they like kind of cut the hole in the drywall and they put the wires into the wall, you as the classroom teacher are not going to be able to just check the wires. If it's like a wire hanging down, troubleshooting wise, you might just have to plug it back into the wall. So if there's no power coming to it, try that first. The second thing for power that you as a teacher will be able to do is on the stack. And now I know yours are mounted to the wall, but you will still be able to kind of slide your hand behind it. If you slide your hand behind and you have to go down, you'll feel where the power cord itself is plugged in. And right next to where the power cord is attached to the board, there is a small toggle switch. It looks similar to the type of toggle switch you would have on a power cord, on a power strip. And that toggle switch could also be where the power was cut off. So if you're not getting any power to the board, if you can plug it back in, check that it's plugged in. And if you can reach your hand behind and feel for the power cord, check the toggle switch and see if that helps. If not, obviously you're going to have to call your IT, because if there's no electricity coming to it and you do have it like wall mounted where the wires are in the wall, you as a classroom teacher aren't going to be able to do that. Now, hopefully that does not happen to you often. Hopefully it does not happen to you at all. But I have seen some occasions where the boards are off and the teachers are like, I didn't turn it off. And it was like a custodian unplugged it while they were cleaning the classroom the night before, and the teacher just didn't know where to plug it back in. So it's sometimes something very silly, but that's always the number one troubleshooting I like to say is the check the power. All right. So when you come over to your board on the side, you are going to have a bunch of these buttons, and the top button is your power button. And when you hit that power button, the board is going to wake up. The reason I say wake up and not turn on is because we already discussed the fact that there has power all the time to these boards. That power is a really good thing, because Smart is a very smart company, and they know that teachers are using these boards all day during the day. And they know that these boards are mounted in every time zone. So what happens is around 2 a.m. in the morning, our time, these boards will get what are called over-the-air updates. And over-the-air updates is when, if you have a computer, and I'm going to assume that 99% of you have computers, you know when you get that little pop-up that says updates installed, click to restart? The Smart board gets those updates at 2 in the morning, and it loads and resets on its own. So by not turning the power, like not unplugging it, you're going to be getting those updates. And we are going to look at how to manually do the updates as well, because there are a couple of occasions where, you know, maybe you had a blackout and your custodians and your building engineers, they didn't get the power back on until Monday morning, even though it went off like Saturday night. So we'll look at how to do those over-the-air updates manually, so you can make sure you are getting the latest software, because there are times where the software change is like unnoticeable, and there are other times that it's like, wait, when did that happen? So I want you to be aware of that so that you can make sure you always have the latest and greatest. When you turn the board on, this is the default type of screen. You have just a generic background, and then you'll see the clock with the calendar and the word favorites with your whiteboard and your browser. Now, I didn't realize you guys were at home today. I thought you'd be in your classroom so you can kind of play along with me on your boards and test the stuff out. But at the end of this, when you go back to school and you're trying this out, if you have problems, you're going to have my contact information. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there's a question as you get going on your own. All right, so we're going to look at the whiteboard first. But before we look at the whiteboard, I want to show you some stuff in the settings, because as I said, those over-the-air updates come through, and there are things in the settings that you might have to turn on because they default to off, but they are super awesome and you're going to want them. So the settings is right down here on the bottom of the screen, and you're going to hit settings. Some of this stuff you're not going to play with. You do not have to worry about a lot of the stuff that you see here. You know, your school district is going to already set up your Wi-Fi and your internet, your power, the date and time. You're not going to have to mess with that. These are the ones on the settings that you need to know as a teacher. Right here, if you scroll up until we get to the bottom, you'll see software updates. And there is an option that says check for updates. And that's how you would manually check. And if there was an update, it would install it. Troubleshooting and little tips I want to warn you. On the top, it says update channel. And it gives you the ability to switch to beta. Do not do that. Interestingly enough, you would think that beta is supposed to be the newest, latest, greatest, like test it before it really becomes public. But about 6 months ago, Smart stopped the beta and just sends everything to the stable channel now. They only have, the beta is only internal for Smart testing now. They don't let customers have the option. So if you selected that beta channel, it actually won't be updated because it's 6 months old and they haven't sent anything new to the beta channel. So make sure on update channel it says stable. And then again, just hit the check for updates and it checks and it'll install if there's anything. The other thing on this settings that I really want you to be aware of, because you're going to have to turn this stuff on, under application settings, you're going to click on Smart Whiteboard. You are going to scroll down to the bottom and you will see an option that says Other. Enable finger inking and enable shared whiteboard. Turn both of those on. They are defaulted off, but they are incredible. And when I show you how they work, you're going to want them. So just know that they are defaulted to off and you have to turn them on. The other thing in the settings, screen share. I don't know specifically what your school district's policy is, so I want to show you this just in case, but please go by your district. If your students have Chromebooks or iPads or anything that you'd want them to wirelessly share to the board, you can turn that on. And you'll see when you go to that screen share option, it has AirPlay, Google Cast, Miracast, everything is listed. So basically you can say, okay, I only want Chromebooks. I don't want them to ever share an iPad. So turn off AirPlay and Apple devices can't share. But the very top one says require permission, prompt me before devices automatically connect. Make sure you turn that on. The reason being is because when someone wirelessly shares, it's going to give you at the board, it's going to say like X device wants to share, yes or no, rather than just pop up the screen. And it doesn't pop up the screen full screen, and I'll show you that as well. But just know by forcing the permission, it prevents inappropriate stuff from magically appearing on your screen. All right, and the last, I think I said last thing multiple times now, but this really is the last thing that I want you to know. Wallpaper. You can choose to customize your background. They have a bunch of different options, but the option that I like to always show teachers, the very top, USB pictures. You can add files from a USB drive. Remember that side panel I showed you? If you plug in a USB cable over here, or yeah, USB cable, sorry, if you plug in like a flash drive, any picture files will show up right here and you can select it as your background. So if you want to put the school mascot, if you are a huge fan of the Eagles, I don't know, I know they just lost, I'm not a football person. But if you want to put something custom, flash drive, pick this picture and it'll load. But you have all of these defaulted backgrounds as well that you can choose from. So that is everything in the settings that teachers really need to know. Before I move out of the settings, I'm going to just come over to my laptop for a second. Are there any questions? Nothing's in the chat because I told you guys I couldn't see it anyway, but someone's coming off mute, I think. Any questions at this point? All right.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
You mentioned one of the first features or something about turn on fingerprint and something else. I missed that.
All right. So when you're on the left side and you're like scrolling through the options for settings, Smart Whiteboard, And then at the very bottom, it says enable finger inking and enable share whiteboard. And I can zoom the camera in if that helps. Unfortunately, because we're on Zoom, I can't really screen share the board itself. I mean, I can, but it's just very complicated. But you can see as I zoomed in, it says enable finger inking and enable shared whiteboard. So what you're going to do, and I'm moving the camera the wrong direction. So what you're going to see is there's that little toggle switch, and you want to just make sure those toggle switches are on. All right. As I really mess up with this camera. You would think I've been using this camera with the remote control for almost a year and a half now. I would know how to use the remote better. But I really need them to hire me a cameraman. All right. So I'm going to explain what those two things are when we actually go into the whiteboard. I just wanted you to know that they're in the settings to turn on. So whenever you're anywhere on the Android device and you need to get back to the home screen, there's this magic button that I think it looks like an arrow, but they call it a home. It's supposedly a house. So you just click on that little touch panel right at the bottom between the two pens, and it'll take you back to the home screen. We are going to go into the whiteboard right now, and I'm going to show you what that finger inking meant, and I'm going to show you what shared whiteboard means. All right, so we're up at our board. We turned it on. Now, as you guys are aware, you have two separate color pens. You can write in two colors at the same time. That's what the two different pens mean. If I want to write different colors, right over here on the side, there's a little picture of a pen. And you'll see that when I click on the pen, it pulls up my colors. And I can change the black pen to purple, or I can change the red pen to orange. Something to recognize when you're doing this. Whatever you touch the color with, so like I'm holding the black pen and I'm touching blue, my black pen is now blue, my red pen is still orange. So whatever color you touch the pen with, or whatever pen you touch the color with, is what it's going to write. When you click on that pen, you'll also notice at the very bottom is a small white dot, and that white dot will actually open up the color wheel. So you can get more than just the 5 colors that defaulted. We talked about that finger inking though a second ago. Right now, by default, my hand is the mouse. Notice that I can drag the board. I can move my writing aside. It's a mouse. I click on that pen again, and at the very top of the pen is a little picture of a finger, and it has a toggle switch. And just so you know, I am going to share screenshots of all of this so you can get a better view of what this menu looks like since the camera doesn't zoom in all the way. But you click on that little finger, and now my hand, notice I'm writing with all my fingers. These boards actually have 20 points of touch. You can have, and your full hand is the eraser, but I'm going to put the styluses down for a second so I have both hands. There's 10 lines at the same time. You have 20 points of touch. So you could have a bunch of kids up here solving math problems or doing something by using their hands. However, if I need my hand to go back to be the mouse, like right now, I can't drag. I click on the pen, I turn off the finger, and now my hand is back to being a mouse. So that is what the finger inking is. That was the feature that you turned on. If you don't have finger inking on, you won't have the toggle switch on the whiteboard. And I heard someone else come off mute. Yes. Was there a question? I thought I heard someone come off mute.
I just got to say, that is awesome. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
And your hand can be a third color. So all your fingers will be the same color. But like, let's say I take the red pen to the red, I take the black pen to green, and I take my finger to blue. I could write in 3 colors. So it's a really cool feature. And again, it's defaulted to off, which is why I always start by telling teachers to get into settings and turn it on. The next thing, we talked about turning on shared whiteboard. This is a great feature if you want to be able to call the kids up to the board, but you're still social distancing and you don't want to disinfect your pens and you have, I don't know if you guys have one-to-one, but if your students have devices, you can turn on shared whiteboard and they can write on the board from their computers, from their cell phones, from whatever device you allow them to use. They could actually all interact at the same time. And what I'm going to do is right down here on the bottom, I'm going to hit the plus sign and I'm going to put a new blank screen. And I am going to open up my class code for you. So you'll notice that when I clicked on the icon of two people, it pops up over here in really small. It gives you that class code, but it also makes it really big on the front of the screen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this in the chat so you can see it a little better. But if you have your cell phone or any other device, what you're going to do right now is you're going to go to hellosmart.com. and you are going to join the class. Now you can join as a guest. You do not have to join with your Google account right now. When you do this with your students, you want your students to log in with Google. And if you come to our third session on the cloud session is where I'm really going to be talking about exactly what Hello Smart is, how to use it with your students for that engagement and that interaction. But I just want you to see right now that share feature. And I could see that Amy has already logged in. Nicole has logged in. So what's going to happen now? I have 5 people logged in right now. On your Hello Smart, you're seeing my whiteboard. If I write, and please note that I was a computer teacher, not a handwriting teacher. So don't judge, I hope, please. So I just wrote good morning. I'm going to show you another really cool feature right away. If I select the little rectangle on the side and I drag over good morning, and then there's a little arrow that'll pop up next to the blue box. And it did not work this time. Okay. There are times where it'll actually translate into text, but this time it didn't. I guess because I have the line underneath. Let me try just doing a rectangle around the word good and see if that works. Yeah, so it was because I drew the line underneath, but you'll see here's an option. It says convert to text, but it only converted part of it because of the way my handwriting looks. So note that you do have the ability to potentially, apparently I just deleted it completely. You do have the ability to convert your handwriting. What I am going to do, I'm going to just write something again on the board, and then I am going to go over to the people icon. And right underneath this, the start and stop, it says everyone can edit. So if I turn that on, you should now see like pens on the side of your screen, and you could all write on my board from where you are. So anyone, just you can scribble. I see somebody's writing in purple already. I see someone writing in red. So you could see that I could have all my students writing on the board without physically calling them up to the board. Now, obviously, if you have a touch screen, this is going to be easier than if you're trying to use a trackpad on a mouse. But it's a really good feature. While we're in here, I'm going to show you another feature. Now, if I wanted my students to stop writing, I click on the people icon again, and I just turn off the everyone can edit, and it turns it off for them. The next feature I'm going to show you is what's called a shout it out. I'm going to hit that plus sign on the bottom again, and I am going to select shout out from the top. On your devices, you are going to get a text box. On my smart board, I have a gray screen. I would like you guys to tell me one thing that you really want to know about the hardware before this hour ends. Because again, the software sessions are later in the day. But type one thing you want to know about the hardware and hit enter, and it's going to pop up on my screen. All right. How do you launch the class code for Hello Smart again? Excellent question. On the side of the board, you are going to see you have a back arrow. Then you have, I didn't even show you logging in yet. I'll show you that if we have time, but that's more of the cloud software. Then you have the people icon is the third one. And when you click on the people icon, you see all the people in your class. You'll see right up here, it says start, and right now it says stop sharing because I'm sharing. If you haven't shared yet, it'll say start. It's not going to automatically share unless you as the teacher hit share. So that'll say start and stop. The code is always on the top, but if you click the arrow, it will pull it out full screen so the kids in the back of the room can see it. All right. Adjusting calibration. I can guarantee you, you will never have to calibrate this board, ever. The only time I've been working for this company for about 3 years now, and the only time I've ever had to do calibrations is if I'm going to a school that still has projectors, or occasionally if I go from my Mac to my PC, I have to calibrate because the board gets confused with the changing of the OSs. But theoretically, you never have to do that. All right, troubleshooting using the pens on a connected computer. We're going to get to that in a moment. Can you launch Hello Smart out of the whiteboard? Yes. So my third session today, the cloud session, that's the Hello Smart on the cloud side. Can students erase everyone's work too? If you have the shared board turned to on, then yes. If it's shared, they can erase it, unfortunately. When we were in the cloud and I show you how to do handouts and worksheets and stuff, in that sense, no, because they're only going to see their own work. They wouldn't see the classmates. But anytime you're doing something collaborative where everyone's writing on the same board, then they can all write, but they could all erase. Let's see. Can I write on Google Slides? Yes and no. You can't write directly on the Google Slides. You can, but it's kind of messy. So what happens is when you're on any website such as Google, what happens is the board is actually going to put like an invisible layer. As soon as you start writing, it puts like an invisible clear layer over the website, which is why if you were to like scroll, your writing would stay where it is and the page scrolls underneath it. Or if you change the slide of your Google slide, you'll still see your writing on the next slide. So you can write on it, but it doesn't like stick to the Google slide and stay. Now, when we, again, in the third session, when we get to the cloud, I am going to show how to convert Google Slides to a smart file. And when you convert it to a smart file, everything you write on it stays on it. You could actually access it from the board without plugging in a computer because, again, that little person icon that I didn't actually show you yet, you can sign in to your Google Drive and you can access any smart file. It won't access your Google Slides. It'll only access the smart files in the Google Drive. But those files you can write on. It will go to the computer. It'll come back to the board. It's a really nice partnership that the computer has in that cloud. All right, so I think that's pretty much all those questions. I do want to show you obviously how to connect the computers, and then we're going to talk about the pen connecting troubleshooting that this person asked. So I will talk about that a little bit, but in general, if you're going to use the cloud, you might never actually plug the computer in. It really is going to be personal preference of what works best for your flow. I like using the computer myself because I just find it more flexible. Obviously, it's like the same thing between if you're going from like Microsoft Word downloaded on your computer and then you're using like Office 365, which is Microsoft's cloud version. You lose functionality when you go into the cloud, but you gain the collaborativeness, you gain the flexibility of locations, accessing your stuff from any device. So it's going to be your preference of the downloaded software on the computer or the cloud because they both have their pros and cons. They both have more features of one type, but less features of the other type. All right. I'm going to hit the home button again. And I mentioned the screen sharing. So I wanted to show you that wireless screen sharing. Down here at the bottom, we didn't talk about these buttons yet. We have files, apps, input, and screen share. When you click on screen share, and this is why I said the kids aren't going to just like pop up over your presentation, but you still don't necessarily want to give them the ability to just, share. So when you click on share, there's a couple things you need to be aware of. First of all, any device wirelessly sharing to the board must be on the same network as the board. That is going to be your IT department. That's not really going to be your concern. I don't know if your devices, do you have like a faculty network and a student bring your own device network? Do you have a guest network, or do you just have like one network in your building? That's where the IT department is going to come into play with this. The boards must be on the same network as whatever device is connecting. When they go to connect, if they're using Chromecast, if you're using AirPlay, it gives you the directions. So if you're familiar with sharing from your device, like to your television, you should know how to do this. It's the same process. And I heard someone else come off mute. Okay. Seriously, come off mute and just stop me. I don't mind. What I want to show you is when I scroll over, you can kind of see it in the camera. There are these like shaded rectangles. That's where people's screens are going to pop up. So if you put this up and you say to your kids, all right, Johnny, I want you to share your presentation so you can present. Well, if Johnny's sharing his presentation and like Michael feels like being a silly class clown, technically you can have 4 devices connected at once. So that's why I say you want to turn that permission on, because it would say Johnny's Chromebook, yes, no. Michael's Chromebook, yes, no. That way you have to manually allow the actual preview of the image to show. You would then just double tap on the screen and that one would go full screen depending on what's connected. I see some text in the chat, so. All right. How can I connect and access my document viewer onto my smart so the kids can see it? When you say document viewer, do you mean a document camera?
Yes, a document viewer or document camera.
All right, so depends on, there's a couple things, but it really depends on the camera. Oh, and then for the second question about a new pen, they do sell new styluses. I don't know the cost. You'd have to have your administration reach out and find out how much they cost to replace. I don't know, and I don't want to give you wrong information, but yes, they do sell the pens you can buy. In fact, you could actually have, remember I told you you had 10 points of touch with your fingers? If you wanted to, and I don't know the price, they actually sell packs of pens with like a little magnetic case. You could have 6 different colored pens going at once on this board, but you have to have the 6 pens because the pens have like a little chip in them that the board can recognize the one pen from the other. So yes, you can purchase more pens. For the camera question, I am going to go back to home. And like I said, there's 2 different options. If you want to plug directly into the board, plug that USB over here on the side. And then down at the bottom where it says apps, when you turn on apps, camera is an option. And when you open the camera, it's telling me that there's no camera attached. If you had a USB camera and you attach it, you'll be able to open the camera full view on the board. So that's way number 1 if you want to do it a direct connect. If you wanted to do it from your computer screen, you would just open it on your computer like you normally do, and then just share your computer screen to the board. So those are the 2 ways to do a document camera to the board. All right, so I kind of started showing you apps to show you the camera. So let me go in here because this is important too. There are a couple of apps that are default downloaded, the camera, the calculator. The smart sensors is actually kind of pointless, but cool at the same time. So right up here are some sensors that are built into the board. And they used to be for technical support, because when they say to you, like when your board, if your board malfunctioned, and they would be like, well, did the boards get wet or something? And you'd be like, I don't know. Well, there are built-in sensors in the board to tell you what the humidity is, because, humidity is not always a good thing for electronics. And so you can find out, like right now, this room that I'm currently standing in is 81.9 degrees Fahrenheit. That explains why I'm so hot right now. But the temperature is listed right there, and so is the humidity. So you can get that information. If you're a science teacher, you can have your kids like check, what's the room like today? How does that affect our experiments? And again, all they would do is when you're in the App Store, just click Smart Sensors. And it does give you Fahrenheit and Celsius, because I don't know if you're aware of this, Smart is a Canadian company. So they're very, very big on Celsius, but they know that Americans like Fahrenheit. The App Store. Again, this is something you might not be aware of. In the Google Play Store, when you have an Android phone, every app has terms of service. And 99% of those terms of service say that the app cannot be downloaded on a screen larger than 17 inches. I know if you're like me, you never read all that fine print, but it actually is there apparently. So what Smart has done is they have gone out to the manufacturers, to the developers, and they have gotten permission to install apps on the larger screen, because this is an Android device, just like unless you're an iPhone person. But if you're an Android person, this is the same device, like this is the same operating system as your phone, just a lot bigger. So they have gotten special permission from all of these vendors. Now, every app itself is free to download. The reason I like to specify the app is free, because the software isn't necessarily free. For example, I'm trying to find one that I know specifically. Well, like the Microsoft tools. You can download Word and Team and Excel and OneNote to the board, but you have to log in with your Office 365 account, or it'll just say can't function. So even though the app itself will download, if you don't have an account with that program, it won't work. For the elementary schools, that's going to be like your ABC, BrainPop, BrainPop was the app I was looking for, but I don't see it for some reason right now. But yeah, so you can download all of those type of apps. Google Earth is actually really cool on the smartboard. So if you're teaching geography, you can pull up the globe and you can zoom in, the pinch and zoom. It is a really cool one on the phone. All right, so on the board. I'm gonna hit the power button again. If you have an app that you really like, so let's say you are gonna have your USB camera plugged in all the time. When I go back to the app page itself, I can click the little star on the camera. And now when I go back to my home screen, my camera is there under favorites. So you have the ability to favorite an app if you know you're going to use it all the time. The other thing is you'll see it says recents, and these are everything we've done. So there's the whiteboard we were playing on, there's the camera I opened, there's the App Store. But what happens if you need older files? Well, when you click on Files, this is going to provide you chronologically every file that's ever been done on the board. Obviously, we only have one file right now because I had actually cleared this board off the other day. Remember I mentioned to you that you can log in with the cloud? I want to show you that now because I want to show you the difference. So when I clicked on Files, only that one whiteboard from today is showing up. But if I come over here to the people icon and I click Sign In, you're going to notice it gives you the option for Google and Microsoft. So I'm going to log in with my Google account and I'm going to show you how that affects the board. And again, as I'm typing my username and password in, just a reminder that the third session is going to focus completely on the cloud software. So if this is interesting to you, I know that you guys had a pre-sign up for sessions, so you might not be signed up for that afternoon session, but we are recording them all, so you could always ask for the recording, I'm assuming, and get that cloud session later on. So the board is signing me in. It's going to take a moment. And because like I mentioned, I reformatted this board the other day. So you're going to notice now when I click Files, it's going to take a moment, but all of my files are now loaded. And I could open up any file. So if I click here and I open up this file, my cloud file, my smart file is going to open. Something else to point out, when I did Hello Smart with you before, I had that 5-digit code. That was the board. Now that I'm logged in, If I click on my initial, or sorry, if I click on the people icon, I have a different code. 120636 is my personal code. Every one of you, when you log into the Smart Cloud, will have your own 6-digit code. That code is pretty much like your phone number. It follows you everywhere. So whether you are sitting in the science classroom for 9th grade or you're sitting in study hall for 10th grade, whatever classroom you're physically in, if you log in the board, all of your stuff follows you. And that class code follows you as well. So I just want to make you aware of that. The class code will be different from when you're logged in to when you're logged out. Other things I didn't mention to you on the whiteboard before, I showed you that you can drag with your fingers, but if you use 2 fingers, you could also zoom in and zoom out. You could rotate. So again, just like anything you can do on a touch screen phone or tablet, you can do on this whiteboard. When you click that plus sign, I showed you the whiteboard and the shout out before. I didn't mention the graphic organizers and the manipulatives, so just be aware. You do have some like pre-made templates for graphic organizers. The manipulatives are more for the math teachers, but you'll have a bunch of different ones. For example, base 10 blocks. This one's really popular. So you have your ones, you have your tens, you have your tens, you have your hundreds. So you can do math problems. You can do all different stuff. Now these down here are all what's called infinite cloners. So however many times I drag, I never actually will run out of that original shape. So again, lots of different things you can do. All right, so we have about 15 minutes left. There are a few other things in the whiteboard that I didn't show you yet, but before I go show you some of those more intricate things, I want to see if you have any questions at this point.
How did you get to the 10 block
Okay.
those templates again?
All right, so if you're in any whiteboard, and you don't have to be logged in for this, this is any whiteboard. I just logged in to show you my files come with me. Right down here, there's a plus sign. And ready-made resources, you'll have your graphic organizers and your manipulatives. You have coins. Now, they have American coins and European coins. They have fraction blocks. They have a 100 chart. Music teachers really love this one. They have staff paper, and you can actually like drag your clefs and your notes. So, like I said, a lot of different things. You'll just have to, when you're at your physical board, you'll just have to play around to see what all of those options are. All right, so some of the things I didn't show you on the whiteboard yet because they're really cool to know exist, but they're also, I don't like to run out of time, so I always show these last if there's time. On the bottom, when you open a new whiteboard, you're going to have a bunch of paper options. So if you're teaching primary school, you can open up that line paper with the dotted line. If you're teaching math, you can pull up graph paper. If your kids have indoor recess and you just want them to graffiti the board, you can pull up a brick wall. So a lot of different things you can pull up from those backgrounds. On the side, underneath your pen, we talked about the rectangle for selecting, but the next option is a picture, and I could do a search. So let's say that I want to look up a school building. I could search for a school. I spelled school wrong, but it's okay. It figured out what I wanted anyway. And I can just double click on the picture and it drags the picture onto my whiteboard. I can now pick up my pen and I can write on the picture. I could also, from that same insert option, I can select videos. This is actually going to pull up YouTube videos. So I could pull up a video from YouTube and you'll see that it pulls it up as a thumbnail. When I double click on it, it goes full screen and it plays. I don't know what that video is. I'm not going to actually play it for you guys, but it'll go full screen and it'll play. Here's the thing, and I want you to know this because there's actually 2 ways to pull YouTube up on the board. And also your school, if you block YouTube, it's going to be blocked on the board. Just be aware of that. But On the whiteboard, I pull it up and you get that thumbnail. You could write around it. So like I could write on the title, I can like point to stuff on the thumbnail, but when I double click on it and it opened up, I can't write on it. So when the video is full screen, you can't write on it. You can only write on the thumbnail. Now, if I go back to my home screen and I open up my web browser and actually go to YouTube in the web browser, this is where it gets a little different. I could open up a video on the web browser. And I'm just going to go to the video called Billboard Hot 100 because it's the first video. I'm not going to do a search and find stuff. And it's going to obviously open up a commercial for Grammarly first. But let's say that I'm watching this video. As soon as my pen touched the board, it pauses the video and took a screenshot. And I knew that was for Grammarly because for some reason, I think they're trying to tell me something. Every advertisement I get is Grammarly. But once your pen touches the board, it takes a screenshot and you could write on it. Up here in the corner, you'll see a green X and you could either save your screenshot or delete it. It's up to you. As soon as you do that, the video will continue playing. Now, the downside to this, you cannot go full screen. So basically, your options are go full screen in the whiteboard and not be able to write on the video, or go small screen on the browser and be able to pause and write on the video. That's, again, going to be a personal preference to what you want to do for that moment.
Cori,
Yes.
can you show one more time? How did you get the thumbnail? Because I only knew the browser, and yeah, you can't go full screen, and that's always annoying. And you have all those ads and stuff.
I'm going to show you that, and then the last thing I want to show you, we have 10 minutes left, is how to actually switch between the board to the computer if you're plugging a computer in. So I want to just make sure I have time for that. All right, so I'm going to just open up a whiteboard. Any whiteboard, it could be one you already created, it could be a brand new one. And on the left menu, the third one down is like a picture of a plus sign, of a picture, like a landscape with the plus sign. And it says add content. Now you could add from the web, or if you have like your flash drive plugged in, you can pull it up from the flash drive. But you just go here to the web and you hit start typing. I'm going to type in Elmo this time because I love videos of Elmo. It's always safe to pick up videos of Elmo, except for some reason you always get that weird fire one on the first picture that comes up. On the top, it says images and videos. You click on videos, and now it pulls up the videos from YouTube. Double click on the one you want. And if you know the actual title of the video, you can type the title in and it will pull it up. Unfortunately, you can't do like the URL. That doesn't work as far as I've seen. But now I have the thumbnail. I can come around and I could ask my students, like, all right, so what do you see? And Elmo's red. And it's there's a street sign or whatever. So you can go ahead and write around the thumbnail. When you want to play the video, you double click on it. It'll go full screen. So
Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. But again, just reminding you, you can't write on it when it's full screen. All right, so I'm going to hit the plus sign down here. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about plugging in the computer. So something to be aware of is there are 2 wires attached to your board. Depending on how your school set this up, the wires. So my wires are currently plugged into the side panel, but they could be plugged into the back and like come through like, you know, the overhead ceiling and then go to a wall mount somewhere. So where the wires are depends on your school. But you're going to have 2 wires. Wire number 1 is an HDMI and wire number 2 is a USB. I like to think of it this way. The USB is your mouse. So if you're one of those teachers that has a wireless mouse and you have to plug in that little dongle to your computer to actually use the mouse on the laptop, that's kind of what the USB cable is. That's going to give you your touch. That's going to let you write on the computer. That's going to let you double click to open a program on the computer, all of that stuff. The HDMI is like your television at home. It's going to be your video and your audio. So if you don't have both wires connected, you might be able to see stuff but not touch it, or you might be able to like, I've seen this happen where the kid will unplug the HDMI so the teacher's not seeing. Let me rephrase this. I've done this to my colleagues just as a joke to show them how it happens. But you unplug the USB and they're sitting at their laptop, you know, all innocent doing work, and all of a sudden you just start going like this and their mouse will move on them. Because if the USB is plugged in, then the board is basically a giant mouse pad. The HDMI is how you can see what you're touching. All right, once you've plugged in those cables, on the bottom, you'll see the option that says input. And when you click input, you're going to see the previews. There are multiple ways to connect. So HDMI 1 and HDMI 2 are on the back of the board. HDMI 3 is this one here on the side. And I don't believe any of you are using VGA, but there is still a VGA function on the board. But as I clicked on the VGA one, so you're seeing it's looking for the connection, but it's never going to find it. But I click on the preview of my laptop, and now my laptop screen is nice and big right on my board. Again, because I have that USB, I can move stuff around, I can drag, I can do whatever I need to do. If I want to write on the board, I can just pick up my pen. I could write on my board. Now, that's kind of what I was talking to you about before. Oh, it stayed on Zoom. That's actually kind of interesting. All right. So depending on what you write on, sometimes when you write, it doesn't actually like follow through with you. It just kind of stays on the screen. For example, let me go into my Google Drive for a second. Here's the slide that I put on this at the beginning. So if I circle on that slide, it never works the way you expect when you're demoing. Normally that circle would have stayed there and the slide would have moved underneath it. But today it seems like it's actually sticking. Maybe that was one of those latest software updates that just came through that I didn't know about. Yeah. All right. So you can write, like I said, you can write on the websites, but if you're doing it in Smart, it's going to just be a little easier. Okay. So at this point, I want to see if there's any questions during the last 5 minutes, and then I'm also going to share out the slide deck with you, because obviously you guys want those screenshots and all the notes in case you need them moving further along. Is there a way to fix when you can't write when in an HDMI connection? Okay, let me get back up to the board and I'm going to show you that. Let me just share the slide deck with you first. Okay. So this slide deck has a ton. This is the master deck for the whole day. So it has a ton of stuff about the softwares. It has screenshots of the Android screenshots. I was told that some of the classrooms might be getting a different model of the board. So I do have pictures of both the 6000 that we're talking about today and the GX, which is the other board. So just be aware that some of the slides are a different board. All right, so for the HDMI, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to share my computer screen with you momentarily, because this is where it'll get interesting. Okay, so I got to kind of minimize everything so that I'm not making you guys, I can't minimize the Zoom call while I'm recording, of course not. All right, so I'm just going to push that off to the side of my screen. All right, so I am here, I'm on a Mac right now. If you are on a PC, it's going to be down at the bottom right corner near the clock. On the Mac, it's up at the top. And I just realized I didn't move my camera back to look at me. Oh, I did move the camera back to look at me. Okay. But you're going to see, and again, this depends on what computer you have, whether you're on a Mac or a PC, it's going to always be near the clock. But you're going to see this blue rectangle. And you'll see when you click on that blue square with a white circle. And when you click on it, you're going to see Smart Settings, and you're also going to see Check for Updates. So if you click the Check for Updates, it's going to check if all your software is up to date. And you'll notice that mine is all activated and I have a subscription. If I click on the settings, that's going to actually open up the settings. Now, do you guys have Macs or PCs in your school? All right, PCs. So PCs are not going to have this issue. For some reason, when you have a Mac, Apple has so many security settings that every time the Mac OS updates, I have to go into Mac settings and give the computer permission. Like I have to give the Smart permission to see my screen. I need to give Smart permission to control my mouse, Smart permission to record everything. So that's the reason why some pen troubleshooting is the Mac issues. But if you're on a PC, you shouldn't be having those issues at all. It doesn't come up with the PCs. So I would definitely click on that blue square. The other thing is, you'll notice right now my blue square has a red box, a red X on it. And when I clicked on it, some things are grayed out. That means that if you remember when we got on the call, I had to unplug and plug back in. Even though the touch was working, it's not recognizing the board right now. And that's why some features weren't there. So occasionally troubleshooting, you just have to restart your computer and that would come back up and work correctly. We are at the end of our session. My contact information is on the slide deck that I shared with you, but I'm also going to give you my email address and my Twitter handle. You are more than welcome to reach out to me anytime. I will be out of town next week. I will be at the EdTech conference, FETC, down in Orlando. So if you need help, I will not be as fast to answer next week because I'm going to be a little preoccupied. But you can go on Twitter and tweet to Smart. I believe it's a hashtag SmartPLN. And they are pretty fast at getting answers to people because they want their teachers to be successful. But thank you all for joining me for the hour. Like I said, I know you guys were at home, so when you get back to your boards and you start playing around, don't hesitate to reach out if you have those questions.